So what are occupational standards? Occupational standards describe what a person in a particular occupation is able to do, what they know, and what they're capable of doing. Capable means having the skills, knowledge, and abilities to perform the job effectively. And the occupational standards that we're describing today, the ones developed for early childhood educators, were developed by ECEs across the country for use by you and by your peers. So why do we develop occupational standards? They're a very valuable tool, and they are based on competencies that describe exactly what an early childhood educator must be able to do in their job. Occupational standards can be used in any number of ways by a variety of audiences in the early childhood and care sector, including government decision makers, early childhood education and curriculum developers, directors of early childhood education centers, as well as frontline early childhood educators. A how-to guide was developed to promote the occupational standards for early childhood educators. They're meant for discussions and to stimulate those discussions between frontline ECEs and directors of early childhood education centers. These are only examples that we're going to present today. They're not best practices on how to develop the tools from occupational standards, but they are 5 very specific ways on how you can use the occupational standards in your setting. We encourage you to read through the how-to guide and the occupational standards and develop your own uses for the occupational standards. The second use of occupational standards for early childhood educators is to develop performance appraisal tools from them. Performance appraisals allow supervisors and early childhood educators to acknowledge performance and to set performance goals and objectives for frontline workers. Other benefits of those performance appraisals include identifying ECE's strengths, identifying ongoing professional development opportunities and places where they can expand their skills, and the fostering of open communication between supervisors and ECEs. And although there are a number of methods that can be used to conduct performance appraisals, the ones we're going to talk about are creating great materials that you can use from the occupational standards within performance appraisals for ECEs. The first step of this example is to set a performance rating scale. Supervisors require clearly defined rating scales so they can talk with ECEs to really focus on the skills and the tasks that they perform. There are many different kinds of scales that can be used for performance appraisals. Some people like to use letters, others use numbers and an ascending scale that describe exactly how the ECE is progressing within their skills. And the example that we're going to present here today uses phrases and short sentences that really describe the experience level of that ECE who is being appraised using this form. There are a lot of different ways and ratings that you could use in the rating scale with the performance appraisals, but they must be specifically and clearly defined, they must be measurable, and they have to be performance-based, like the standards. So to develop performance appraisal forms, you need to make sure that those forms that you're going to use are tailored to the specific skills and experience of the ECE. To help create the forms, you can review the tasks and subtasks of the occupational standards and use them as indicators for the appraisal. Not every early childhood educator will perform every task and subtask within the occupational standards, so it's important that those tasks and subtasks that you select for your performance appraisal tools are very specific to the needs of the ECE and describe exactly what their role is within your center. And performance appraisal forms typically contain sections for each task within the standards where the supervisor can take some notes, and you can share those notes, and within the interview that we're going to discuss here on the next step, you'll be able to share notes and experiences and your feelings about those competencies as you move into the interview. So the last step in the process is to conduct the performance appraisal interview. This involves the early childhood educator director or supervisor and the frontline worker as well. The method requires some preparation from each party. The supervisor needs to take a look at the form that they've developed to make sure that the skills and tasks that have been taken from the occupational standards really reflect the responsibilities and duties of that frontline worker. And also the frontline worker will need to go through the tasks and subtasks that have been identified and provide ratings for themselves as to where they see their experience and skill level within each of those skills, because that will foster an open communication between the supervisor and the frontline worker as they discuss where they've placed those skills and those abilities on the competency rating chart. When the interview is conducted, the supervisor and frontline ECE come to a common perception of the expectations using the specific performance requirements that have been outlined in the appraisal form. It allows for the director and the ECE to set goals and objectives, and we like to call these SMART goals and objectives because these objectives you want to make sure are specific, they can be measurable, they are attainable, they're realistic, and they can be performed and met within a timely manner.